For 3 years, Park Min-jae's body didn't work. The doctors said it never would again. Not after the bullets, not after the nerve damage. Until a voice he'd never heard before said 2 words that changed everything. "Welcome, friend." Rain hammered the glass doors of a small boutique in Itaewon. Inside, warm amber lights glowed against African prints, shea butter mixing with humid Seoul air. Afrobeat played softly, 2 worlds refusing to stay separate. Thandi Khumalo looked up from her sewing, gold bangles clinking, and smiled at the man in the doorway. She had no idea he was Seoul's most feared Mafia boss. She had no idea her voice just broke a 3-year curse. And she definitely had no idea that in 3 weeks, loving him would almost get her killed. What happens when a broken body remembers how to feel? When medicine says impossible, but love says otherwise? Stay close, besties. This one will destroy you before it heals you. To understand what happened in that boutique, you need to understand what happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Park Min-jae was more than feared. He was untouchable. 28 years old, already controlling territories from Gangnam to Itaewon, already negotiating deals that moved millions in cash and weapons across borders. But power makes you a target. It was a Tuesday, late November. He remembers because the first snow had just fallen. They ambushed him outside a warehouse in Gangnam, 6 men from the Busan syndicate, all carrying guns, all desperate to take down Seoul's youngest mafia boss. The first bullet shattered his car window. The second hit his shoulder. The third changed everything. Min-jae remembers the pain, white hot, blinding. Remembers his legs giving out. Remembers blood pooling on the concrete, steam rising from it in the cold air. Remembers sirens screaming in the distance, too far, too late. Remembers his second-in-command Kang screaming his name. And then, nothing. He woke up 3 days later in a private hospital suite, broken ribs wrapped tight, left leg in a cast, and a doctor standing over him with a face that said everything before his mouth did. "Mr. Park," the surgeon had said, adjusting his glasses nervously, "you'll walk again. The leg will heal, the ribs will mend, but," that word but, "the bullet that hit your pelvis caused extensive internal damage, nerve damage, vascular damage. We did everything we could, but..." The doctor cleared his throat. "Your manhood, Mr. Park. The function. We can't promise anything. The damage is too severe." For 3 years, Park Min-jae lived in a prison made of his own body. Wealthy? Yes. Powerful? Yes. Feared? Absolutely. But whole? No. He tried everything. Western doctors who ran tests and shook their heads. Traditional Korean medicine. Herbs, acupuncture, meditation. Pills from Japan that promised miracles and delivered nothing. Surgeries that left more scars. Korean models threw themselves at him. Beautiful women who saw a rich, powerful husband. Each encounter ended the same way. Humiliation, whispered apologies, pitying looks, and then the gossip, behind closed doors, in rival gangs, even among his own men. "Did you hear? The great Park Min-jae can't even..." His body is as dead as his victims. Half a man running a whole empire. The shame ate at him like acid. Every failure carved deeper into his pride until he stopped trying altogether. He became colder, more ruthless. If he couldn't feel alive in his body, he'd feel alive through fear, through control, through blood. His men learned not to question him. His rivals learned not to test him. And anyone who whispered about his condition disappeared. But no amount of power could fill the void inside him. No amount of money could fix what was broken. No amount of violence could make him feel like a man. Have you ever felt trapped in a body that betrayed you? Ever felt like less than what you're supposed to be? Comment me if you've carried shame that no one else could see. You're not alone in this. For 3 years, Park Min-jae accepted his fate, accepted that he would never feel whole again, until the night he walked into a boutique in Itaewon and heard a voice that changed everything. What he didn't know yet, what no one knew, was that his body was about to prove every doctor wrong, and the woman who would heal him had no idea she carried that power. Min-jae stood in the doorway, water dripping from his coat, staring at this black woman who smiled at him like he was just a person, not a monster, not a killer, not Seoul's most dangerous man, just someone caught in the rain. And then it happened. Heat flooded through him, sudden, fierce, undeniable. His pulse thundered in his ears. Blood rushed to places that had been numb, dead, empty for 3 years. His manhood stirred, hardened, burned with an intensity that made his breath catch in his throat. For the first time in 3 years, his body responded. Actually responded. Not phantom sensation, not imagination. Real, raw, impossible, terrifying, glorious sensation. Min-jae froze. His eyes went wide. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Sweat prickled his forehead despite the rain cold clinging to his skin. What is happening to me? This isn't real. This can't be real. The doctor said, "Are you okay?" Thandi tilted her head, concern softening her features. She took a step toward him, just one step, and the scent of cocoa butter and vanilla wrapped around him like a spell. The sensation intensified. His hands started trembling. He stumbled backward, his shoulder hitting a display of colorful scarves. They tumbled to the floor in a cascade of fabric, reds, yellows, oranges scattering like his composure. "Sir, you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you—" Without a word, Min-jae turned and fled, turned and ran like a coward, like a boy, like someone who'd just seen their entire understanding of reality shatter in a single smile. The chime rang again, mocking, final, as he disappeared into the Seoul rain. Thandi stood there, blinking at the open door, rain misting her face. "Well," she muttered, bending to pick up the fallen scarves, gold bangles clinking. That was strange. She had no idea that in 3 minutes, that man's entire life had just changed. She had no idea that her voice, just her voice, had broken a 3-year curse. She had no idea that Park Min-jae would spend the next 6 hours replaying that moment, terrified and hopeful and completely, utterly lost. And she definitely had no idea that the most dangerous man in Seoul had just decided she was the most important person in his world. Whether she wanted to be or not. Would you run from a miracle, or would you chase it, even if it terrified you? Drop run or chase in the comments. Let's see who's brave. But here's what neither of them knew yet. In 6 days, he would come back. In 2 weeks, he would fall in love. And in 3 weeks, his world would try to kill her for it. The clock was already ticking. That night, Park Min-jae sat in his penthouse overlooking the Han River, a glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. The city lights blurred through his vision. Seoul spread out below him like scattered diamonds, cold and distant and beautiful. Usually this view made him feel powerful, untouchable. Tonight it made him feel small. He couldn't stop replaying the moment. Her smile, warm, genuine. No fear, no calculation, no agenda. Her voice, "Welcome, my friend," like he was someone worth welcoming. The way she called him my friend when no one, not his men, not his rivals, not the women who tried to seduce him, had ever looked at him and seen just a man. And his body had responded, actually responded, after 3 years of nothing, of numbness, of humiliation, of doctors shaking their heads, and models whispering behind his back. "Impossible," he whispered, slamming the glass down so hard it cracked against the marble table. Whiskey spilled across the surface, amber liquid spreading like blood. The doctors said, but his body didn't care what the doctor said. His body had felt something, real, undeniable, impossible. At 2 a.m., unable to sleep, unable to think about anything else, Min-jae grabbed his phone and dialed his private physician. 3 rings. 4. "Mr. Park?" Dr. Kim's voice was groggy, confused. Is everything all right? Do you need— I need you to run tests. Min-jae cut him off, his voice rough. Tomorrow, first thing. Tests? For what? Min-jae's jaw clenched. How could he explain this? How could he tell his doctor that a woman's voice, just her voice, had done what 3 years of medicine couldn't? Just do it, he growled and hung up. He sat there in the dark, staring at his reflection in the window. For 3 years, he'd accepted being broken. For 3 years, he'd buried hope so deep it couldn't hurt him anymore. But now hope was clawing its way back to the surface, and hope, he knew, was the most dangerous thing a man in his position could feel. Hope is the cruelest gift. It makes you believe in miracles, right before it destroys you. But sometimes, it's all we have. If you've ever hoped for something impossible, comment, hope. Let me see you. What Min-jae didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that tomorrow's test results would make everything worse. Because sometimes, the cruelest thing isn't losing hope. It's having hope and being told you're insane for believing. The private medical suite was sterile, cold, everything in shades of white and chrome. Machines hummed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Min-jae sat on the examination table, fully dressed, waiting. Dr. Kim entered with a tablet, his face confused. I don't understand, Mr. Park. The doctor adjusted his glasses, staring at the scans. According to these results, nothing has changed. He turned the tablet toward Min-jae, images of nerves, blood vessels, scar tissue. The nerve damage is still there, the scar tissue, the vascular issues. Everything is exactly as it was 3 months ago when we last checked. If anything, it's slightly worse from natural deterioration. That's impossible, Min-jae growled, heat flooding his face. Last night He stopped. How could he say it? How could he admit to his doctor that a woman's voice had made him feel things, want things, respond in ways that should be medically impossible? He never blushed. Ever. But now his cheeks burned like he was a teenager confessing his first crush. Dr. Kim set down the tablet, his expression sympathetic. Mr. Park, sometimes the mind can create phantom sensations, especially when we want something badly enough. It's not uncommon in cases of prolonged dysfunction. Dysfunction, that word. The brain is powerful. It can make us feel things that aren't really— Get out. Min-jae's voice was deadly calm, quiet, the kind of quiet that made his men reach for their guns. Dr. Kim didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his tablet and fled. Alone in the sterile room, Min-jae pressed his palms against his eyes, fingers digging into his temples. Was he losing his mind? Had he become so desperate, so pathetic, that his brain was inventing miracles that didn't exist? 3 years of shame, and now his own mind was betraying him, giving him false hope just to twist the knife deeper? But no. He knew what he'd felt. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't phantom sensation. It wasn't his desperate brain playing tricks. It was real, raw, undeniable, and it had only happened because of her. Which is why, 5 days later, Park Min-jae did something he swore he'd never do. Something his men would call reckless. Something his rivals would call suicide. Something that would change the course of his entire life. He went back to that boutique, alone, unarmed, vulnerable. But what he didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Thandi Khumalo had a secret of her own. A secret buried in her bloodline. A secret that would explain everything, or destroy them both. Her great-grandmother had been a Sangoma, a South African healer who could cure what medicine couldn't touch, who could see what science couldn't measure, who could mend broken spirits with nothing but presence. And that gift? It didn't die with her. It lived in Thandi's voice, in her touch, in the warmth she carried like a second heartbeat. Min-jae was about to walk into a miracle he couldn't understand. And once you taste resurrection, You can never go back to being dead. Science says impossible. His body says otherwise. Bloodline says destiny. Who do you believe? Comment science, body, or destiny. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? The next 10 minutes will prove you wrong about everything. 5 days. 5 days of trying to forget. 5 days of burying himself in work. A weapons deal with the Busan Syndicate that required 3 meetings and 2 threats. A territory dispute in Hongdae that ended with a rival gang leader begging for mercy. A traitor in his own ranks who needed to be dealt with. Min-jae handled it all with his usual cold efficiency. But every night, lying in his too large bed, staring at the ceiling, he heard her voice. Sawubona. Welcome, welcome. Warm, genuine, home. On the 6th day, he found himself standing outside Thandi's boutique again. No guards, no driver, no backup. Just him alone, in the middle of the afternoon, staring at the glass door like it held the answer to every question he'd ever asked. His second-in-command, Kang, had tried to stop him. "Boss, you can't just—" "I can do whatever I want," Min-jae had said, voice flat. And that was that. But now, standing here, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear, not fear of bullets or rivals or death. Fear of hope, fear of disappointment, fear that maybe Dr. Kim was right, maybe his mind had invented the whole thing. The chime rang. That same chime, that same sound that had echoed in his head for 6 days straight. Thandi looked up from a laptop, her long box braids pulled back with a colorful scarf, orange and yellow, like sunset. She wore a fitted green dress that hugged her curves, gold bangles clinking softly on her wrists as she moved. And when she saw him, her face lit up. Actually lit up. Like seeing him made her day better. "I! The Running Man!" Her laugh was rich, unguarded, melodic. "You came back. I thought maybe I scared you away with my terrible sense of humor." Min-jae's heart stuttered. His body responded instantly, that same impossible fire igniting in his veins, spreading through him like wildfire. It wasn't his imagination. It was real. His voice came out rough, unused to uncertainty. He cleared his throat. "I need a suit." Thandi's smile widened. "A suit? Okay. What kind?" She stood, walking toward him with easy confidence. "We have traditional Korean hanboks with African prints, my specialty. Very fusion, very unique. Or maybe something more modern? Classic tailoring with just a hint of color?" She gestured to the racks, and Min-jae took an involuntary step back. She stopped, one eyebrow raised. "I don't bite, you know." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Unless you're made of biltong." She laughed at her own joke, the sound filling the boutique, chasing away shadows. Min-jae had forgotten what genuine laughter sounded like. All he heard these days were nervous chuckles from his men, forced giggles from women trying to seduce him, or the cold silence of rivals who knew better than to laugh in his presence. But this was real. And that's when he realized something terrifying. He wasn't here for a suit. He was here for her, for this feeling, this warmth, this glimpse of something he thought he'd lost forever. Humanity. "So," Thandi said, grabbing a measuring tape from the counter, "let's start with basics. You're very tall. What are you, 185 cm, 190? 188, Min-jae said stiffly. Good height." She circled him slowly, professionally, but her presence felt anything but professional. It felt intimate, dangerous. She stretched the measuring tape across his shoulders, her fingers brushing his back through his expensive black shirt. The touch sent electricity racing down his spine, every nerve ending screaming to life. Broad shoulders, strong build. Her voice was thoughtful, clinical, but underneath, was that warmth just for him? She pressed lightly at the base of his neck. "But you carry tension here, right here, like you're always expecting a fight, always ready for someone to attack." Min-jae jerked away, breathing hard, heart pounding. Space. He needed space. He needed... Sorry. Thandi held up her hands immediately, stepping back. Did I hurt you? No. The word came out sharper than he intended. I don't like being touched. Thandi's expression softened. No judgment, no offense, just understanding. Okay, no touching. I get it. She nodded slowly. Some people carry trauma in their bodies. Physical wounds heal, but the memory stays in the muscles, the nerves. It makes sense. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so accepting, made something in his chest crack open. No one had ever understood, without explanation, without him having to defend himself. She just saw. Can I ask you something? Thandi tilted her head, measuring tape draped around her neck. Min-jae tensed. What? Why did you run last time? Silence. Did I say something wrong? Do something offensive? No. Did I smell bad? She sniffed her arm dramatically, wrinkling her nose. Because I definitely showered this morning, used the good soap and everything. Despite himself, despite every wall he'd built, every defense mechanism he'd perfected, Min-jae's lips twitched, almost a smile. Thandi's eyes lit up like she'd just won a prize. Ah, there it is. I knew you could smile. It's just hiding under all that seriousness. I don't smile, Min-jae said, but his voice had lost its edge. Everyone smiles, Thandi countered, returning to her measuring, careful not to touch him this time. They just need the right reason. She jotted down numbers on a notepad. So, Mr. Mysterious, are you going to tell me your name, or do I have to keep calling you the Running Man? Because I will. I'll commit to the bit. He hesitated. No one asked his name. Everyone knew it. Knowing his name meant fear, meant respect, meant understanding exactly who you were dealing with. But she didn't know. And maybe that was the point. Min-jae, he said quietly. Park Min-jae. She tested it on her tongue, saying it slowly, carefully, like it mattered. Min-jae. Her smile widened. That's beautiful. Strong name. It suits you. She extended her hand. I'm Thandi Khumalo, originally from Johannesburg, but Seoul is home now. Or trying to be. Min-jae stared at her hand, small compared to his. Delicate fingers, but calloused from sewing, from work, from building something with her own hands. Nails painted bright yellow like sunshine. Slowly, like approaching something sacred, he reached out and took it. Their palms met. And the fire roared again. His entire body came alive, nerve endings screaming, blood pounding in places that had been numb for years. Sensation so intense it made him dizzy. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved, neither breathed. Just contact. He pulled back quickly, stumbling slightly, catching himself on a clothing rack. Thandi frowned, concern replacing the playfulness. Are you sure you're okay? You look pale. When's the last time you ate something proper? I'm fine, Min-jae lied. Sure. She didn't look convinced. Well, I'm making pap and chakalaka for lunch in the back. You're welcome to stay. I always make too much anyway. Habit from home. In my culture, we never let people go hungry if we can help it. The offer stunned him into silence. When was the last time someone invited him to share a meal? Not a business dinner, not a power play, not a negotiation disguised as hospitality. Just food, company, connection. Why? The question escaped before he could stop it. Thandi shrugged, her expression gentle. Because you look hungry and lonely. And in my culture, we have this philosophy called Ubuntu. I am because we are. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. We're all connected. She smiled, soft, warm, genuine. Besides, you look like you need a friend. And I could use one too. Min-jae didn't trust his voice to respond, so he just nodded. When's the last time someone saw you, really saw you, and just wanted to feed you, to sit with you? To be your friend with no agenda? Comment if you know that feeling. The feeling of being seen. What neither of them knew was that in the kitchen, sharing that meal, they would both confess secrets that would bind them together forever. Secrets about invisibility, about not belonging, about being rejected by the very people who were supposed to love you. And once those secrets were spoken, there would be no going back. Because some confessions don't just change relationships, they change destinies. The small kitchen at the back of the boutique smelled like home. Tomatoes, onions, peppers simmering in a pot. Spices Min-jae couldn't name but somehow recognized in his bones. Thandi hummed as she stirred, a South African folk song, the melody rising and falling like waves. Min-jae sat at a small table, feeling out of place and exactly where he needed to be all at once. She served him pap, soft, white, warm, and chakalaka rich with vegetables, the kind of food that tasted like someone cared whether you ate or not. In my culture, Thandi explained, demonstrating with her hands, we believe food tastes better when you eat with your hands. It connects you to what you're eating, makes you present in the moment. She rolled the pap into a ball, dipped it into the vegetable stew, and ate. Min-jae copied her movements, feeling foolish and childlike and strangely content. The food was simple, honest, real. Nothing like the elaborate meals served at business dinners. All presentation, no soul. This had soul. So, Thandi said, wiping her fingers on a cloth napkin. What do you do, Min-jae? He tensed. Business. What kind of business? Import. Export. The lie came easily. He'd said it 1,000 times. Thandi leaned back in her chair, studying him with those knowing eyes. Let me guess. The kind of business where you can't tell people what you really do. The kind where you wear expensive suits but no wedding ring. The kind where you walk like you're ready to fight even when there's no danger. His breath caught. How did she? I'm a woman who owns a business in Itaewon, Thandi said simply. Do you know how many different kinds of people walk through that door? Soldiers on leave, businessmen with secrets, criminals looking for something beautiful to hold on to, broken people searching for, I don't even know, something, anything. She paused, her gaze holding his. Which one are you, Min-jae? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. He could lie, should lie, but something about her, about the way she looked at him, the way she asked without judgment, made him want to be honest. All of them, he admitted, and none of them. Thandi nodded slowly, understanding flickering in her eyes. That sounds lonely? It is. She held his gaze for a long moment, and in that moment, Min-jae felt seen in a way he hadn't in years. Not feared, not judged, not pitied, just seen. Well, Thandi said softly, you're not lonely right now. Come on, eat. The food's getting cold. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Then Thandi spoke again, her voice quieter now. You're far from home, aren't you? Min-jae looked up. What makes you say that? The way you eat, like you're remembering something, someone. You're far from home too, Min-jae observed. Thandi's expression flickered, something sad and old passing through her eyes before she could hide it. Yes, very far. Why did you leave? She was quiet for a moment, pushing chakalaka around her plate. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but soft. My father was Zulu, my mother was Xhosa. Min-jae didn't understand the significance, but he heard the weight in her words. In South Africa, those are two different ethnic groups, different languages, different traditions, different everything. And historically, there's been conflict between them. Old wounds, old grudges passed down through generations. She took a breath. My parents loved each other, really loved each other. but their families never accepted it. When I was born, both sides rejected me. My Zulu relatives said I wasn't Zulu enough. My Xhosa relatives said I wasn't Xhosa enough. I was just not enough. Min-jae's chest tightened. He knew that feeling. Different reasons, but the same ache. I grew up being told I was a mistake, Thandi continued, her voice still steady, but Min-jae could hear the old hurt underneath. That I didn't belong anywhere, that I was the product of a betrayal. My very existence was wrong. She looked up, meeting his eyes. So when I was 22, I left. Came to Korea because it was as far from home as I could get. Started this boutique because I wanted to create something that belonged to me. Something no one could say I wasn't enough for. But you know what's funny? Thandi's laugh was soft, sad. I came all this way to escape being invisible, and here, I'm even more invisible. What do you mean? People see my skin before they see me. They hear my accent and decide I'm a curiosity, not a person. I'm exotic, I'm different, I'm interesting. But I'm never just Thandi. Just a woman who makes beautiful things and wants to belong somewhere. Min-jae felt something breaking open inside his chest, something he'd kept locked for years. I see you, he said quietly. Thandi's breath caught. What? I see you, he repeated, louder this time, the words pouring out now, unstoppable. Not your skin, not your accent, not where you came from or what people say you should be. He leaned forward. I see Thandi, the woman who invites strangers to eat, who creates beautiful things with her hands, who smiles like the sun exists just for her, who looks at broken people and sees human beings. Tears welled in Thandi's eyes, spilling over. Min-jae, I know what it's like, he said, his own voice rough now. To feel like you're not enough. To feel like your body betrayed you, like you're not the man you're supposed to be. To look in the mirror and see a stranger who can't be what everyone expects. Her hand found his across the table, small, warm, real, and this time he didn't pull away. Then we're the same, Thandi whispered. Two people who don't belong anywhere, finding each other. If you've ever felt like you weren't Zulu enough, black enough, man enough, woman enough, Korean enough, African enough, if you've ever felt like you were too much and not enough at the same time, type me below. You're not a mistake. You're not invisible. I see you, besties. And so does everyone here. For a long moment, they just sat there, hands joined, two broken pieces fitting together in a way that made sense. The boutique was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside. The rain had stopped, and for the first time in 3 years, Min-jae felt something other than shame. He felt hope, but hope, as Min-jae knew, was the most dangerous thing in his world. Because at that exact moment, across the city in a warehouse in Busan, someone was looking at photos of him entering this boutique. Someone who had been searching for his weakness for months. And they had just found it. The moment shattered when Min-jae's phone vibrated. Harsh, jarring against the quiet intimacy they'd built. He glanced at the screen. Kang, his second in command. Min-jae's jaw tightened. Kang never called unless something was urgent, unless someone needed to be dealt with, unless... I have to go, Min-jae said, standing abruptly, pulling his hand away from Thandi's. The loss of contact felt like tearing something. Thandi nodded, wiping her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself. Will you come back? The question hung there. Min-jae wanted to say no, wanted to walk away and never return. This woman was dangerous, not because she had weapons or power or influence. She was dangerous because she made him feel things. Hope, warmth, possibility. In his world, those things got you killed. In his world, caring about someone made them a target. But when he looked at her face, still hopeful despite the tears, still open despite the pain she'd just shared, he heard himself say, yes. And he meant it. He walked to the door, stopped, hand on the handle. Without turning around, he said, "Thank you for the food, for seeing me." And then he was gone, the chime ringing behind him. Thandi sat there for a long moment, staring at the empty chair across from her, at the plate he'd barely finished. Something had just happened. Something important. She didn't know his last name, didn't know what he did for a living, not really, didn't know if he was dangerous or safe or somewhere in between. But she knew one thing. Park Min-jae was the loneliest person she'd ever met. And somehow, against all logic, against all sense, she wanted to know him. Have you ever met someone and just known, deep in your bones, that meeting them changed the trajectory of your life? Comment yes if you believe in fate, because what's about to happen next? Fate is cruel. Min-jae walked out of that boutique thinking he'd just found something precious. What he didn't know was that he'd just painted a target on her back. Because 3 blocks away, in a black sedan with tinted windows, someone had been watching. Someone had taken photos. Someone had just sent those photos to Lee Sung-ho, leader of the Busan gang, Min-jae's oldest enemy, the man who'd been searching for a way to destroy him for 3 years. And Sung-ho was smiling, because the great Park Min-jae, Seoul's most feared mafia boss, the man who showed no weakness, who loved nothing, who cared about no one, had just been photographed holding hands with a woman in a boutique. Alone, vulnerable, human. The war was about to get personal. Min-jae came back 3 days later. This time he bought a scarf, bright red, the kind his men would never expect him to wear. "Why do you always wear black?" Thandi had asked, draping it around his neck, standing so close he could smell cocoa butter and vanilla. "It's practical. It's depressing." She'd stepped back, tilting her head. "See? Now you look alive. Color looks good on you." He'd bought the scarf, wore it under his coat where no one could see, a secret rebellion. 5 days after that, he returned. "Do you have family?" Thandi had asked while showing him fabric samples. "No." "Friends?" "No." "People who care if you live or die?" He'd paused, the question cutting deeper than any knife. "I have men who work for me." Thandi had looked at him with those 2 knowing eyes. "That's not the same thing, Min-jae. Everyone needs someone who cares about them. Not what they can do. Just them." 2 days later, then 4 days, then twice in 1 week. Each time, he told himself it was the last time. Each time, he found an excuse to return. "Boss," his second-in-command Kong said carefully one evening, standing in Min-jae's office. "You've been distracted lately. Is everything all right?" Min-jae didn't look up from the paperwork on his desk. "Fine. It's just..." Kang hesitated. "You've been going to Itaewon alone, without security, multiple times a week. That's not safe. If the Busan gang..." Min-jae's glare could have cut steel. "Are you questioning me?" Kang bowed quickly, fear flickering in his eyes. "Never, boss. I just worry." "Don't." But Kang was right to worry. Min-jae was being reckless. Every time he visited Thandi's boutique, he left his carefully constructed armor at the door. She teased him, made him laugh, actually laugh, the sound rusty and strange in his throat, asked him questions no one dared ask, questions about loneliness and hope and what it meant to be alive. And the worst part? He answered. He told her things he'd never told anyone, about his mother dying when he was 12, about being raised by an uncle who saw him as a tool, not a nephew, about building an empire out of blood and fear because it was the only language he knew. And Thandi listened, didn't judge, didn't flinch, just listened. And in that moment, Min-jae realized something terrifying. She was the only person in the world who saw him as just a man, not a monster, not a boss, not a killer, just Min-jae. And that made her the most dangerous person in his life. Because in his world, once your enemies know what you care about, they use it to destroy you. And Lee Sung-ho, he'd been watching, waiting, gathering evidence. Photographs of Min-jae entering the boutique alone, timestamps, patterns. He knew, and he was about to make his move. In a warehouse on the outskirts of Busan, Lee Sung-ho sat at a metal table, cigarette smoke curling around him like ghosts. Photos were spread across the surface, black and white, high resolution, damning. Park Min-jae entering Thandi's boutique. Different days, different times. Park Min-jae leaving, always alone, sometimes smiling. Park Min-jae through the window, sitting at a table with a black woman, their hands touching. Sung-ho's spy, a young man with nervous eyes, stood across from him, shifting his weight. He goes to this boutique in Itaewon, the spy reported. Multiple times a week, always alone, no guards, no backup, stays at least an hour each time. Sung-ho picked up one of the photos, studying it closely. And the woman? Thandi Khumalo, South African, owns the boutique, no family in Korea, no connections to any gangs, no protection. She's nobody, boss. Sung-ho's smile spread slowly across his face, cold, calculating, victorious. Nobody, he repeated softly. That's perfect. He leaned back in his chair, taking a long drag of his cigarette. For 3 years, I've been trying to find a way to hurt Park Min-jae, to break him, to destroy that empire he's so proud of. He tapped ash onto one of the photos. And all this time, I was looking in the wrong place. I was targeting his businesses, his territories, his money. Another drag. When I should have been looking for this. He held up the photo of Min-jae and Thandi, hands joined across a table. The great Park Min-jae has a weakness after all. Sung-ho stubbed out his cigarette, eyes glittering. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to... He leaned forward, whispering instructions to his men. When he finished, the spy looked uncertain. Boss, if we do this, Min-jae will come for us. He'll come with everything he has. Sung-ho laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Let him come. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. He picked up his phone, checking the time. Tonight. We move tonight. Tonight? The spy's eyes widened. But we're not prepared. We're prepared enough. Sung-ho stood, buttoning his jacket. And Min-jae? He's exactly where we need him. Distracted, soft, human. He looked at his men, his expression hardening. Bring me the girl, alive. I want Min-jae to watch her suffer before I kill her. I want him to know that caring about someone in this world was his biggest mistake. The men moved, checking weapons, preparing. And across the city, in a boutique in Itaewon, Thandi Khumalo hummed as she sewed, completely unaware that her life had just been measured in hours. Completely unaware that Park Min-jae, the man she was starting to care about, the man who looked at her like she was sunlight, had just become the reason she was about to die. Because love in the Mafia world isn't romance, it's a death sentence. And Min-jae was about to learn that lesson in the cruelest way possible. In 7 hours, he would walk into that boutique for what he thought was a normal visit. In 7 hours, everything would explode. In 7 hours, he would have to choose her life or his pride, and the choice would destroy him. If you knew falling in love would put them in danger, would you still do it? Comment yes or no. Because what Min-jae's about to face, there's no right answer. And if you're not subscribed, do it now. The next 8 minutes will rip your heart out. Don't say I didn't warn you. Rain hammered Seoul again, harder this time, violent, like the sky was trying to wash away sins. Thandi was closing up the boutique, counting the day's modest earnings, when the door burst open. Min-jae stood there, drenched, breathing hard, water streaming from his hair, his clothes. He looked wild, desperate, like he'd run the whole way. Min-jae? What? I need to tell you something, he cut her off, water dripping onto her floor, forming puddles. About who I am, what I do, before... He stopped, running a hand through his wet hair. Before what? Thandi closed the door, locking it, giving him privacy. I'm not a businessman, not in the way you think. He paced, words tumbling out now, 3 years of secrets spilling like blood. I run the park syndicate. I control territories from Gangnam to Itaewon, weapons, money, protection rackets. I've hurt people, killed people. I'm the monster mothers warn their children about. He stopped, turning to face her. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew. Things I can't take back. Things that mean I'll never be clean, never be good, never be... I know, Thandi said simply. Min-jae froze. What? I know who you are, what you do. She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. I've known since your second visit. Google is very helpful, Min-jae. Park Min-jae, leader of the Park Syndicate, Seoul's most feared mafia boss. She said it like she was listing his coffee order. And you still... His voice broke. You still let me come here? Fed me? Talked to me like I was... Like you were what? Human? Thandi pushed off the counter, walking toward him. Because you are. I'm a monster. No. Her voice was firm. You're a man who does monstrous things to survive in a monstrous world. There's a difference. What difference? The first kind of person enjoys the violence, the power, the fear. She stopped in front of him, close enough to touch but not touching. The second kind? They're just trying to stay alive in a world that never gave them another choice. She reached up, cupping his face with both hands. You're the second kind, Min-jae. I see it in your eyes. You're tired, so tired of being the monster. And that did it. 3 years of control, of walls built brick by brick, of armor worn every second of every day, came crashing down. Min-jae dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against her stomach, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd held back for years. Great, gasping, ugly sobs that tore from his chest like they were being ripped out. I'm broken, he gasped, hands fisting in the fabric of her dress. My body doesn't work. I'm not a real man. I can't. Stop. Thandi's voice was gentle but firm, her fingers threading through his wet hair. You listen to me, Park Min-jae. You are not broken. You are not less than. Your worth is not measured by what your body can or can't do. But with anyone else, I can't. With me, you can. She tilted his face up, forcing him to meet her eyes. Every time you're near me, your body responds. Don't you see? It's not that you're broken. You were just waiting for the right person, for someone who sees you, really sees you, and doesn't turn away. He stared at her, tears streaming down his face, hope and disbelief warring in his chest. I don't understand, he whispered. The doctors said it was impossible. The nerve damage? Maybe some things can't be explained by medical science. Thandi knelt down to his level, her hands still cupping his face. Maybe some healing happens in places doctors can't reach. In the heart, in the soul, in the connection between two broken people who refuse to stay broken. Min-jae pulled her closer, burying his face against her, breathing in cocoa butter and vanilla and life, just breathing her in like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. I'm falling in love with you, he confessed into her dress, voice muffled and raw. And it terrifies me, because everyone I've ever cared about ends up dead. The word hung there, unspoken but understood. Thandi's hands stilled in his hair. Then gently, she knelt all the way down, sitting on the floor with him, looking him directly in the eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me too, because I've spent my whole life being told I'm not enough. And now here's this man who looks at me like I'm everything. A tear slid down her cheek. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're allowed to be terrified and in love at the same time. Maybe that's what makes it real. He kissed her then, desperate, drowning, like she was oxygen and he'd been underwater for years, like she was salvation and he'd been burning in hell, like she was home and he'd been lost his entire life. And for 3 perfect seconds, the world outside didn't exist. No gangs, no danger, no past, just them. Have you ever loved someone so much it felt like drowning and breathing at the same time? Comment, drowning if you get it. Because what happens in the next 60 seconds? You're not ready. No one's ready. But the world outside did exist, and it was about to crash through the door. They pulled apart slowly, foreheads touching, breathing hard. "Thank you," Min-jae whispered, "for seeing me, for not—" The sound of glass shattering cut him off. The front door exploded inward, not opened, not unlocked, but kicked in with brutal force. Wood splintered, glass scattered across the floor like diamonds. Min-jae was on his feet instantly, shoving Thandi behind him, already calculating exits, weapons, survival odds. 4 men entered, guns drawn, fanning out in a practiced formation. And in the center, walking through the broken doorway like he owned the place, was Lee Sung-ho, smiling. That cold, calculating smile that meant someone was about to die. "How touching," Sung-ho said, his voice smooth as silk over broken glass. "Sung-ho," Min-jae growled, his voice deadly calm, quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "Min-jae." Sung-ho's eyes slid past him, landing on Thandi. "And this must be the woman who's made Seoul's most dangerous man go soft." He tilted his head, studying her. "I have to say, I didn't expect her to be—" "Finish that sentence and I'll rip out your tongue," Min-jae said, voice still quiet, still calm, but the threat was absolute. Sung-ho laughed. "So protective. It's adorable, really." He pulled out a cigarette, lit it, took a drag. "Tell me, does she know what you did to the last person who betrayed you? How you—" "Get out," Min-jae cut him off. "This is between you and me. Leave her out of it." "But that's the problem." Sung-ho raised his gun, pointing it directly at Thandi. Min-jae's heart stopped. "She's already in it. The moment you cared about her, the moment you let yourself be human, you made her a target?" Sung-ho's smile widened. "For 3 years, I've been trying to figure out how to destroy you, how to break the great Park Min-jae. And all this time, I was thinking too small, targeting your businesses, your money, your territory." He gestured with the gun. "When I should have been looking for this, for her, for the one thing that would make you bleed." Min-jae's mind raced. 4 armed men, 1 door, windows too small, no weapons within reach. Thandi directly in the line of fire. If he moved, they'd shoot. If he didn't move, they'd shoot. There was no winning here, only choosing how to lose. Everything happened in slow motion. Sung-ho's finger tightened on the trigger. His smile stretched wider. "Goodbye, Miss Khumalo. Nothing personal. You just fell in love with the wrong man." The moment stretched, infinite, eternal. Min-jae saw it all. The trajectory, the angle, the inevitability. And he made a choice. The only choice. He lunged forward, throwing himself between Thandi and the gun. Not because he thought he could stop the bullet, but because dying for her was better than watching her die. The gunshot cracked through the air, deafening, final, echoing off walls. But it wasn't Thandi who screamed. Min-jae hit the ground hard, his shoulder slamming into scattered glass. Blood bloomed across his white shirt, dark, spreading, unstoppable. Not his shoulder, not his arm, his side. Center mass, serious. "Min-jae!" Thandi's scream tore through the boutique, raw and primal and breaking. Sung-ho stared, frozen. He hadn't meant to shoot Min-jae. He'd wanted the girl, wanted to make Min-jae watch her die slowly, painfully, knowing it was his fault. But Min-jae had moved, and now, sirens, distant but approaching. "Boss, we have to go," one of his men hissed. panic creeping into his voice. Police! Someone called the police? Sung-ho cursed, backing toward the broken door. This isn't over, Park. Next time, I won't miss what I'm aiming at. And they were gone, vanishing into the soul night, leaving destruction behind. Thandi dropped to her knees beside Min-jae, her hands pressing against the wound, blood seeping through her fingers, warm and sticky and too much. No, 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 no. Her voice broke. Stay with me. Min-jae, stay with me. His vision blurred, edges going dark. He reached up with a shaking hand, touching her tear-stained face. I'm sorry, he whispered, each word costing him. I brought this to you. I should have stayed away. Should have. Don't you dare, Thandi sobbed, pressing harder on the wound. Don't you dare apologize for loving me. Don't you dare leave me now. Not after everything. Not after. Thandi. I said no. She ripped off her scarf, the bright one he'd commented on weeks ago, and pressed it against the wound. You don't get to confess you love me and then die. That's not how this works. You're going to stay alive, you hear me? You're going to fight. His eyes were closing. The darkness was pulling him down, down, down. Min-jae! She grabbed his face with blood-stained hands. Listen to my voice. Follow my voice. Come back to me. Come back. And somehow, through the pain and the darkness closing in like water over his head, he heard her, felt her, chose her. His fingers tightened weakly around hers. Okay, he breathed. Okay. If someone took a bullet for you, would you let them go? Or would you fight heaven and hell to keep them? Comment, fight, if you do what Thandi's about to do. Because love doesn't give up, not when it's real. The ambulance arrived 4 minutes later, sirens wailing, lights flashing red and blue across the boutique. 4 minutes that felt like 4 hours. 4 minutes where Thandi held pressure on the wound and whispered every prayer her grandmother had ever taught her. 4 minutes where Min-jae's heartbeat weakened under her hands. But he didn't let go. Not of her hand. Not of life. Not yet. Because the woman kneeling over him, covered in his blood, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "Stay, stay, stay." That woman was worth living for, even if his body was trying to die. Min-jae woke to white walls, white ceiling, white sheets, and the steady beep, beep, beep of machines monitoring his heartbeat, proof he was still alive, even though part of him wished he wasn't. Because being alive meant facing what he'd done, putting Thandi in danger, almost getting her killed. And Thandi was there, sitting in a chair beside his hospital bed, still wearing the blood-stained green dress from that night. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, braids falling loose around her face. Exhaustion carved lines into her beautiful features. But the moment she saw him awake, she stood, fresh tears spilling over. "You're awake." Her voice was raw, broken, relieved. "Oh God, you're awake." "How long?" Min-jae's voice was sandpaper, his throat dry. 2 days. The bullet missed your vital organs by centimeters. Her hand found his, squeezing gently. The doctors said, her voice broke. They said you're lucky to be alive. Lucky. Min-jae didn't feel lucky. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, pain lancing through his side, white hot and blinding. "Don't move, you stubborn man." Thandi pressed him gently back down. "You need to rest. You almost died, Min-jae. Almost." She couldn't finish the sentence. "You shouldn't be here," Min-jae said, even though every cell in his body wanted her exactly where she was. "It's not safe. Sung-ho will come back. He'll finish what he started. He'll..." "Let him try." Thandi's eyes flashed with something fierce, something dangerous, something that made Min-jae's heart skip. "I called the police, gave them everything. Names, photos, locations. Your second in command, Kang, he's been very helpful. Apparently there's enough evidence to put Sung-ho away for life." Min-jae stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. You What? I protected you, Thandi said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The way you protected me, that's what people who love each other do. Thandi, you don't understand. Min-jae's voice rose, panic creeping in despite the pain. There will be retaliation. His gang won't just let this go. They'll come for you, for me, for anyone who... Then we'll deal with it. Together. She leaned forward, her other hand cupping his face. I'm not going anywhere, Min-jae. I already lost you once on that floor. Watched your blood soak through my hands. Felt your heartbeat get weaker and weaker. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm not losing you again. Not to Sung-ho. Not to your pride. Not to this belief you have that you don't deserve to be saved. Min-jae looked at their joined hands, his scarred and stained with a lifetime of violence, hers small and gentle but somehow stronger than steel. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, Thandi agreed, a small, sad smile tugging at her lips. But you're stuck with me anyway. She squeezed his hand. That's the thing about love, Min-jae. It doesn't care about deserve. It doesn't care about logic. It just is. What followed were 3 weeks in that hospital. 3 weeks of Thandi visiting every day, sometimes twice a day when she could close the boutique early. She brought him food, pap and chakalaka, bunny chow, coexisters that melted on his tongue. She read to him from books she loved, poetry in English and Zulu, novels about people who didn't belong anywhere finding home in each other. She told him stories about growing up in Johannesburg, about her grandmother who taught her to sew, about the first time she saw the ocean and felt small and infinite at the same time. And slowly, so slowly, Min-jae almost didn't notice. The wound healed. Not just the physical one, but the one inside. The one that had been bleeding for 3 years. One afternoon, sunlight streaming through the hospital window, golden and warm, Min-jae asked, "Why me? You could have anyone. Someone good, someone whole, someone who doesn't put you in danger just by existing." Thandi set down her book, studying him. "You want the truth? Always. Because you're the first person who ever looked at me and saw me. Not my skin, not my accent, not a charity case or an exotic curiosity or a woman who should be grateful for any attention she gets." She leaned forward. "Just Thandi, just me." Her voice softened. "And because when I'm with you, I don't feel invisible anymore. I feel seen, valued, like I finally found where I belong." She paused. "And you don't feel like a monster when you're with me, do you? You feel like Min-jae, just a man, a good man who's done bad things to survive." Min-jae's throat tightened, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I feel the same way," he managed. "I know." Thandi smiled. "That's how I know this is real." On the 4th week, the doctors cleared him to go home. Kong arrived with a car, eyeing Thandi with a mixture of respect and wariness. "Boss," he said carefully, "the men are asking questions. About her, about what happens next." Min-jae looked at Thandi, then back at Kong. His voice was steel. "Tell the men that Thandi Khumalo is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, looks at her wrong, speaks about her with anything less than respect, or even thinks about harming her, will answer to me personally." He paused. "And when I say answer to me, I mean they'll disappear. Completely. Do you understand?" Kang bowed. "Understood, boss." As they drove through Seoul, Thandi's hand in his, Min-jae realized something had shifted. The city looked different, brighter, like color had been added to a black and white photograph, like someone had turned on lights in a house he'd thought was abandoned. "Where are we going?" Thandi asked. "My place," Min-jae said. "If you'll come." She squeezed his hand. "Lead the way." What neither of them knew, what they couldn't know, was that Min-jae's penthouse would become the place where everything changed, where his body would prove, once and for all, that miracles don't need medical explanations. where Thandi would discover the truth about her great-grandmother's gift, where two broken people would become whole. But first, they had to face the question that had haunted them both. Could his body function with her? Really function? Or was it all in his head? Desperate hope masquerading as miracle. The next 30 minutes would answer that question. And the answer would change everything. They're about to find out if miracles are real. If love really can heal what medicine can't. If you believe in the impossible, comment miracle. Because what happens next? You'll want to remember this moment. Subscribe so you don't miss a single second. Min-jae's penthouse was exactly what Thandi expected, and nothing like what she'd hoped. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, expensive furniture, leather, chrome, marble, everything in shades of black and gray, cold and sterile and beautiful in the way a museum is beautiful. Lifeless. Thandi walked through slowly, touching surfaces, studying paintings that cost more than most people made in a year. "It's beautiful," she said carefully. "But," she turned to face him, "but it doesn't feel like you. It feels like a showcase, like no one actually lives here." She gestured around. "Where's the color, the warmth, the life?" Min-jae looked around, seeing it through her eyes. She was right. This place was as dead as he'd been 3 years ago. Cold, empty, expensive but hollow. "I never had a reason to make it feel like home," he admitted. Thandi's expression softened. "And now?" Min-jae met her eyes, those warm, knowing, beautiful eyes that saw straight through every defense he'd ever built. "Now I do." The city glowed beneath them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories. But in that moment, only one story mattered. The one about to be written in the next 20 minutes. The one that would answer the question, can love really heal what medicine can't? That night, they stood by the window, the city glowing beneath them like scattered stars. Seoul at night was beautiful, neon and hope and possibility. But Min-jae couldn't look at the city. He could only look at her. "Min-jae," Thandi said softly, not looking at him, her reflection in the glass. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." She turned to face him, vulnerable and brave. "The doctors said your condition was permanent, but with me, you said your body responds." She paused. "Does that still happen? Or was it just those first few times?" His heart raced, fear and hope tangled together. "It still happens. Every time I see you. Every time I hear your voice. Every time you touch me, even accidentally." He stepped closer. "Every time." "Show me," Thandi whispered. Min-jae froze. "Thandi, I don't want to disappoint you. If it doesn't work, if I can't, if I'm wrong about everything and it's all in my head." She placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. "Whatever happens, you won't disappoint me. I don't need your body to function perfectly to know you're enough." She took his hand. "I just want to be close to you, to show you that you're not broken, that you never were." Slowly, carefully, like approaching something sacred, she led him to the bedroom. Min-jae's pulse thundered as Thandi turned to face him, her dark eyes full of trust and something deeper. Love, acceptance, permission to be vulnerable. "We go at your pace," she said gently. "If you want to stop, we stop. No shame, no pressure, just us." But the moment she kissed him, soft and sweet, gentle and unhurried, his body responded with a force that stole his breath. 3 years of numbness shattered in an instant. Sensation so intense, it was almost painful flooded through him. Nerve endings he thought were dead screaming to life, blood rushing, fire spreading. He gasped against her mouth. "Thandi." "I know," she whispered, smiling against his lips. "I feel it too." What followed was tender and desperate all at once. Min-jae touched her like she was precious, like she might disappear if he wasn't careful, like she was porcelain and lightning at the same time. Thandi met him with equal parts gentleness, and passion, whispering encouragement, anchoring him when doubt crept in. "You're doing so well," she murmured against his skin, her voice wrapping around him like safety. "See, your body knows exactly what to do." And for the first time in 3 years, Min-jae felt whole. Not because his body functioned, though it did, miraculously, perfectly, like the injury had never happened, but because someone saw him at his most vulnerable and didn't turn away, saw his scars, inside and out, and chose to stay. It wasn't just physical, it was proof. Proof to himself that he was still alive. Proof that the accident hadn't stolen his manhood. Proof that with her, he was whole. Every touch said, "I'm alive because of you." Every kiss said, "You healed me." Every moment said, "This is real." Afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Min-jae pressed his forehead against hers, tears streaming down his face. Great, gasping sobs that he couldn't control, didn't want to control. "I thought I'd never feel this again," he said, voice breaking, words tumbling out between sobs. "Alive, human, enough. I thought I was half a man, broken, useless, less than. And all those nights, all those years, I believed it. I accepted it. I became it." Thandi cupped his face, thumbs brushing away his tears. "You were always enough, Min-jae. Your body just needed the right person to remember how to come alive." She pulled him closer, letting him bury his face in her neck. "You gave me back everything," he whispered. "Elliot, you healed me." "I love you," Thandi said, her own tears falling now. "My beautiful, broken, perfectly whole man. I love you so much." "I love you too," he breathed. "God, I love you." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, crying together, breathing in sync. Two broken people choosing to be whole together. And outside, Seoul kept glowing. The world kept turning. But in that room, under those sheets, in each other's arms, they were home. If this didn't make you cry, you're lying. Comment, "Not okay," if you're crying with me right now. Because love like this, it's real, it's possible, and you deserve it too, besties. The next morning, Min-jae woke to find Thandi on the phone, speaking rapid Zulu, her voice animated. When she saw him awake, she smiled, ending the call. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice still rough from sleep and emotion. "My grandmother." Thandi climbed back into bed, curling against him. "I told her about you." "What did she say?" Thandi's smile turned mischievous, but there was something deeper in her eyes, something ancient, something knowing. She said, "About time you found someone who sees your light." And then she told me something I didn't know. Min-jae waited. "My great-grandmother was a sangoma. Do you know what that is?" He shook his head. "A traditional healer. In South Africa, in Zulu culture, sangomas are people who can cure what medicine can't touch, who can see what science can't measure, who can mend broken spirits with nothing but presence." She traced patterns on his chest. "My great-grandmother was famous in our village. People came from all over with illnesses doctors couldn't cure, and she healed them, not with medicines or surgery, just with her hands, her voice, her spirit. And that gift?" Thandi met his eyes. "It didn't die with her. It lives in the bloodline, in her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. It lives in me." Min-jae stared at her. You think you healed me? With some kind of, power?" "I don't know." Thandi's voice was honest, uncertain. "I never believed it. Thought it was just old superstition. Folk tales grandmothers tell. But now?" She sat up, looking at him. "Min-jae, the doctors said it was impossible. The nerve damage was permanent. But with me, just with me, your body works perfectly. Maybe it's not science. Maybe it's not psychology. Maybe it's something older, something medicine doesn't have words for." Min-jae caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I don't care if it's medicine, magic, or miracle. I don't care if it's your great-grandmother's spirit or just the way your voice makes me feel alive. He pulled her back down beside him. You healed me, however it happened, whatever the reason. You brought me back from the dead. I think we healed each other, Thandi said softly. You gave me a place to belong. I gave you permission to feel again. She smiled. Maybe that's what love is. Two broken people choosing to be whole together, not because they fix each other, but because they see each other clearly and stay anyway. What if healing isn't about being fixed? What if it's about being seen? Comment. If you believe love can heal wounds medicine can't reach. Because that's the real miracle, besties. Not the body, the soul. 3 months later, Min-jae stood in Thandi's boutique. Except it wasn't just Thandi's boutique anymore. It was theirs. She'd convinced him to invest, to help expand, to use his connections for something good instead of something violent. The walls were painted in warm yellows and oranges, colors that felt like sunset, like home. African prints hung beside traditional Korean art, hanbok fabrics mixed with kente cloth, Seoul meeting Johannesburg in fabric and thread. The scent of shea butter mixed with green tea. It was a fusion, like them. You know, Thandi said, adjusting a display of colorful scarves, the neighborhood ladies have been gossiping about us. Min-jae looked up from paperwork. Legitimate paperwork now. Invoices and orders instead of weapons deals and territory maps. What do they say? That the scary Mafia boss has gone soft. Thandi's eyes sparkled with amusement. That a black woman from Johannesburg somehow tamed Seoul's most dangerous man with nothing but good food and a smile. Min-jae laughed, a sound that still surprised him every time, like discovering he could sing after years of silence. They're not wrong. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, pulling her against him. Thandi leaned back against his chest. Are you happy, Min-jae? He thought about it. 3 months ago, he would have said happiness was impossible, that men like him didn't deserve it, couldn't have it. Now, standing in a boutique that smelled like home, holding a woman who saw every dark corner of his soul and loved him anyway, feeling alive in his body for the first time in 3 years? Yes, he said simply. I'm happy. Thandi turned in his arms, smiling up at him. Good, because you're stuck with me now. No returns, no exchanges. Store policy. Wouldn't dream of it. The chime rang, that same chime from the first day, as a customer entered. They stepped apart, professional, but Min-jae kept her hand in his. A small rebellion against a world that said they shouldn't work, but they did work. Beautifully, imperfectly, wholly. Outside, Seoul hummed with life. Millions of people, millions of stories, all intersecting, all connected. And in that boutique in Itaewon, 2 people who didn't belong anywhere had finally found where they belonged. Together. Hello, besties. The lesson. In this story, we learned that healing doesn't always come from medicine or science. Sometimes it comes from connection, from being seen, from someone who looks at your brokenness and says, you're not broken, you're just waiting to be whole. Min-jae thought his body betrayed him, that he was less than a man because of what he couldn't do. But Thandi taught him that manhood isn't measured by physical function, it's measured by courage, by vulnerability, by the willingness to love even when you're terrified. And sometimes, when 2 broken people find each other, something miraculous happens. Not because of magic, not because of science, but because love has a way of healing wounds that medicine can't reach. If you're feeling broken today, remember this. You're not waiting to be fixed. You're waiting for someone who sees you as already whole. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments. What moment made you cry? What moment gave you hope? Which scene will you remember tomorrow? And remember, this channel is for people who feel deeply. If that's you, If you believe love can heal, transform, and resurrect, then you're home. Subscribe, because next week's story, it's about a woman who lost everything in a single night and found something she never knew she needed. You won't want to miss it. Where broken becomes whole, one tale at a time. I'll see you in the next story, besties.